Samuel, thank you so much for joining me. I know this is gonna be a blast to chat cards with you, and we'll try not to keep it. We'll try not to keep our wives waiting for us too late. But how are you doing? How's your day been going?
I'm doing good. Typical day at the office, being an assistant principal. Working in the education industry and just enjoying the ups and the downs that comes with that job because being an educator is so polarizing now. Just all the things that go on and the conversations that's happening and the various political uh, circles around education. What should we teach? What shouldn't we teach? And I take the good with the bad, and I tell everybody that I talk to about education. This is the best time to be an educator
Mm.
because it gives you an opportunity to look at the canvas that we've been using and for the past 150 plus years and to rethink and redo some things. So I'm excited.
Yeah, no, that sounds, and I am absolutely not in the educational realm. So, um, my wife's cousin, so our cousin and he's written some books on it. And it's fascinating to learn from him. Like I've got a lot of family that's in education, different formats, but
Mm-hmm.
he's one of those that I've learned a lot from. And I try to apply some of that, like a little as much as I can, because like I said, I'm not an educator by
Yeah,
nature at all. But like when I'm putting out content, and I want to share information and share knowledge, and
yeah,
sometimes there's areas where people are misinformed or misinforming others, and I like to
yeah,
try to correct that. So
yeah,
I guess I can feel like a little bit of
yeah.
education flows through me sometimes, but not nearly as much
Uh,
as somebody like yourself.
I mean, doing cards and working as an educator is so transferable because it's a transfer of information. And for me, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a part of a community of educators who, improve their craft in terms of, developing the minds of students and then also developing them socially and emotionally.
Mm,
But, in the community, everything that we do around cardboards, it's a transfer of knowledge. It's a transfer of information about the stories of the players, the rarity of cards, the literacy component that comes with cards. More like
mm,
junk wax, vintage cards. You don't see that much in modern cards, and I wish they go back to that. But it's a transfer of knowledge, and that's the basic premise of education.
mm.
And that transfer of knowledge back and forth, that two-way transaction between teacher to student, student to teacher, and student to student, and it's powerful. And you can do the same thing here, from collector to collector. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to think that any one person knows everything about any area of the hobby would be disingenuous, and like I think
yeah,
we all I can speak for myself. I learn new things from other collectors every
yeah.
single day.
Yes,
And one of the things that my grandfather instilled in me, or like one of the things that I remember that he said while he was still with us, and I mean he was probably had been retired for a while, so he's probably in his 70s or so. But I was a little kid, and talking to him about school and stuff like that, and he said to me like, I learn new things every single day. We never stop learning.
yeah,
So as I grew older, I continued having that mindset where like I'm going to continue learning. I'm going to continue improving, as long as I'm alive. And the interesting thing too is I learned. I don't think I've talked about this before, but so I found out that my parents got my older brother into cards mainly because he was interested in sports, but they found out that he had dyslexia when he was young,
hmm,
and that was a good way for him to start learning how to read and work through his dyslexia, because there was
yeah,
not only words but also numbers and statistics on the
yeah,
back. So through his need to figure out some of his learning disability, eventually I became a collector, which is kind of an interesting thing, and I don't, like I said, I don't think I've made that connection, on at least not on a video before. So
yeah. I mean, the cards back in the day, they told you beyond being enamored by the beauty of the portrait or the action shot, the back of the card told a story. You know,
Yes.
it told you the story of their highest averages, you know, the most difficult years, but it also allowed you to predict like their longevity and what they if they extended their career another 4 years, what potentially their average can be. And
Hmm.
then also learning about what college they went to, you know, where they're from, you know, and that's why I appreciate like junk wax cards, vintage cards, because of that component, that literacy component, that math component, and yeah, it extends to that idea that your grandfather promoted to you, being a lifelong learner, and that's why I love being an educator. You know, I always tell people if I won the lottery, I wouldn't quit my job.
Hmm.
I would still be an educator, and you know, if it wasn't and it wouldn't be about collecting a paycheck. I would literally just find the school district and say, hey, I want to be a volunteer administrator. I don't need you to pay me. I just want to be around kids and I want to impact kids. I want to help teachers grow. So, you know, and that's the same mindset that I put into cards because when I first got back into the hobby during the pandemic, I had to go back to school, you
Mm.
know, and I had this mindset of like, oh, I'm going to sell cards and make a ton of money. But that wasn't me. It wasn't who I was. And I
Hmm.
don't knock anyone who sells cards. Like, do you make your money? Like, if you're passionate about it, especially if it's your livelihood, I support with words of encouragement. And if you have something that I want in my PC and we have a great connection, I'll buy it from you.
Hmm.
But for me, it was about telling the story of my hobby experience. But I had to learn the landscape because the way people collect it now, you know, in 2020, in the middle of a global pandemic, wasn't the way I collected in the 90s, you know,
Hmm.
when I got into the hobby in the early 90s. So, you know, I had to learn the industry. I had to learn this space again. And it was fun and it was engaging. And you know, I saw a need to say, you know what? Everybody is flipping, everybody is selling cards, but who's telling stories?
Hmm.
You know, who's sharing what I coined? And you know, I haven't heard anyone say this before me. The hobby experience,
Hmm.
and that's what I try to promote. You know, yes, it's something that I came up with, but it's bigger than me, and it's about creating a space and encouraging other collectors to tell their story and to share the nostalgia that they get from cards. And those moments that we engage and learn from each other, especially I'm big on this notion called the human capital. I believe in it. Where that's why I don't create a lot of content every day.
Hmm.
Um, I do my content like on a bi-weekly schedule because I want to make sure like I'm not only producing content, but I'm also consuming content.
Mm.
I want to learn from others. I want to make sure I'm taking the time to celebrate others and be a part of other people's experience, to see what cards they're collecting, to read the stories that they write about their cards, and to listen to them if you know they create videos, because it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there. And I just want to make sure I'm honoring that and I'm being authentic with that, and celebrating others who do what I do.
Mm.
Um, Besides like my professional career, you know. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you mentioned getting back into collecting, around the pandemic 2020 after collecting in the 90s. So can you share for those who might not have heard or might not have heard all of, like, what
yeah,
is your story? Like, how did you first get into cards and then what brought
yeah.
you back into cards?
So I fell in love with cards, like we all do. You know, I got older siblings. You know, I got three older brothers. Two of my older brothers collected cards, and it's like that typical story. You know, you're in your brother's room and you're going through their stuff, and you open up a shoebox. You know, because that's how we kept our cards. That's how they
Yep.
kept their cards back in the day. And you see these pieces of cardboard, and you see these athletes that you're coming of age and you're watching sports and you're seeing these people on TV. You're seeing them on T-shirts. You know what I mean? You're seeing them on billboards, and you know, when you're taking public transportation, you're seeing them, you know, on the side of the bus and everything, and say, wow, this is intriguing, you know. And but they were like, hands off, you can't touch those, you know. So it that curiosity started me into collecting, and you know, I still remember when I got my first pack of cards. You know, I was 8 years old at Toys R Us, and I got my first pack of baseball cards and basketball cards, and you know, I fell in love. And then in my neighborhood where I grew up, at Ludlow Elementary School, where everybody went in my neighborhood, there were other kids who collect cards. So my world grew, and I was a part of this community. Now, I couldn't articulate that as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old,
Right.
but I was a part of this community. And, you know, we were all passionate about cards. We all wanted Michael Jordan cards, you know, so that's how the journey started. And, you know, when I was about 12 or 13, you know, life happens. You know, a lot of things were going on in my world being a kid in, you know, inner city North Philadelphia. And, you know, I packed my cards up and threw them in the trash because, you know, at that time, you know, I felt as though like I couldn't be a kid because so much was going on in my life. And, you know, it was a sad day, but it was a day that I always remember because I always tell myself that, you know, in that moment, I couldn't articulate it, but I understood why I was doing it. But I always told myself that if I had the opportunity to get back into collecting cards, I would do it, and I would enjoy it. And I missed out on some great cards in the mid '90s and the late '90s, like the Kobe's, the Kevin Garnett's. Like I missed out on so many dope inserts, and you know, I'm just happy that I get to explore that and I get to fill that void. You know, being a 39-year-old man, father, husband, you know, I get to be that kid again and get back those moments that was lost. But I also get to share it with everybody a part of this community, and that's why I don't sell cards. I give away cards from my personal PC, and you know, just trying to always pay it forward and make sure I'm playing a part in creating some two-way transaction to get other people, other kids, other girls, boys curious about the hobby and intrigued with the hobby. So,
yeah, no. So the first thing that really jumped out to me there is when you talked about going through your older brother's cards, because you know, like we talked about before, like you know, my older brother is really, you know, part of the story of what got me into. And I don't remember which one it was, but I remember the one card that fascinated me was a Daryl Strawberry card that he had, where like Daryl Strawberry was like holding the ball and it looked like he was almost like handing it to me. And I remember I was probably like, you know, 3 or 4. My brother probably, you know, is you know, getting upset just listening to this, that I was going through his stuff at that age. But I remember I would always see it like he was handing the ball to me. I would always say, no, Daryl, no, I don't want the ball. Because I was afraid that baseballs were going to hurt me because I knew that they were hard. My brother played with those. So that's why I gravitated more towards the softer basketball. You know, but it's like, it's funny because like you saying that just sparks this memory. And now this flood of nostalgia, and like we talked about, like all the stuff around me, I'm surrounded by nostalgia. When I talk to my therapist, I'm like, you can tell I'm a pretty nostalgic person, you know. So it's like all of that nostalgia, you know, all these cards bring that back, you know, and it's great to hear, you know, somebody talk about getting back some of those, you know, times as a kid that they lost, and we can feel like a kid again, you know.
No, it's powerful, and also like doing this journey allows me to think about things that I locked away in my memory bank that was traumatic, and it allows me to address, you know, that trauma and name the things that, you know, I've forgotten about, and it helps me process better as a man. So it's been a very rewarding experience, and I've just been enjoying it. And, you know, when I think back to, you know, my first hobby run, it was the Bo Jackson card that my brother had. His I believe it was like the Topps portrait card that I first saw. And then my first exposure to like vintage cards, where my next door neighbor, Josh, who collected cards, he was much older than me. And, you know, I was on my porch. He's my next door neighbor, and my best friend, Gillis, we were all sitting on the steps looking at our different cards. And he was like, He's like, man, you don't got no good cards. And he's like, I got some cards. And he invited me into my best friend's house. We went up to his room, and that was the first time I saw vintage cards. And it
Mm.
was I laid eyes on this beautiful Hank Aaron card, and I actually wrote about that in like one of my past hobby blogs. And like instantly, I was in love. And that was another thing. Like when I left the hobby and coming back, thinking when I started to buy cards again, I thought back to all those moments, and I
Mm.
said, vintage cards. And I have this love for vintage cards,
Mm.
this the simplicity with them, the design, and you know, just pieces of art. And sometimes I get caught up for words because, you know, when people say, "Are you a modern collector or a vintage collector?" Like I love junk wax stuff because it
Mm-hmm.
defined my collecting experience. Um, but there's something special about vintage cards that speaks to the historian in me. As a former history teacher, you know, researching cards, figuring out what was going on during this time,
Mm-hmm.
and then learning stories about players who left their profession to fight in the war.
Mm-hmm.
So just all these layers of learning that comes with vintage cards. So
Mm-hmm.
those were the cards that got me, and then besides that, like I love Wilt Chamberlain. I have a ton of Wilt Chamberlain cards, but beyond collecting Michael Jordan, because everybody in my neighborhood wanted the Michael Jordan cards,
Sure.
especially when Skybox first came out. We all wanted those Skybox Michael Jordan cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Fleer 92, 93 basketball, like we wanted that. And then the 93, 94 Fleer League Leaders card. Everybody in my neighborhood wanted the League Leaders card. But the one PC that I have in my collection that brings back so many unique memories and learning about this player, because when I first pulled his NBA Hoops card, I just didn't I didn't know his story. And being someone who grew up in Philadelphia, like I should have knew that, you know, as a kid. And it was Moses Malone, you know, and my Moses Malone PC is extremely special to me, from his rookie card and, you know, his early Topps cards, the 86 Flair card, when it's his final card when he's in the Sixers uniform, but they got to trade it to the Washington Bullets on it. So, so those are the cards that make the nostalgia for me magical. And if I had to pick my vintage card of today, it would be my 1952 Topps Arestus Manosis card, which everybody clamors over the Mickey Mantle. Like I get it, I understand it, but that card is just his look, the picture, the colors, his facial expression, and then when you start to learn his story, it makes that rookie card, I think, even more iconic than the Mickey Mantle card, in my opinion, simply because of like that time and the breaking of the color barrier, and what players had to do to make that transition from going to the Negro Leagues to playing the major leagues, and taking their talents to play against the best players in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my magical cards.
Wow, you mentioned like a lot of great ones, and I'll make sure to share some pictures of those, just for those who might not be familiar with some of them, because I know I'm not familiar with all of them. But like I haven't gotten bitten by the vintage bug yet, but like there are 3 vintage cards that I forever have on my, you know, eventual, you know, I'm gonna get them in my PC, and those are kind of in order. The Hank Aaron rookie card, because I remember watching The Sandlot.
That's on my list. That's on my list.
And like that's going to take a lot of, you know, fundraising, and that's down the road, you know, like a nice SGC2 might be calling my name or something like that, but those aren't cheap either. But I remember like The Sandlot, when, like, you know, the babe comes out of the closet and says, "Oh, you know, Henry Aaron, I don't know why, but can I have this one?" And you know, it's one of those moments that sticks with me. So there's that one. There's the Dr. J rookie card. You know, because you do, man. I'm jealous.
Beautiful, beautiful,
It
beautiful
it
card.
is
Beautiful
it is
card.
so beautiful. Well, and also growing up, like my brother was a Jordan fan, I was a Penny fan, but I always said to him, as far as like all time goes, because I knew Penny's injury issues and all that kind of stuff. I always said Dr. J because Jordan always said that he modeled his game after Dr. J. So my thesis always was, if there was no Dr. J, there would be no Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So I said Dr. J was better than Jordan because of that. So
A,
I've
a
always.
lot, yeah, a lot of people don't remember this, or I want to say don't remember this, but probably forget this. Like in a time when Magic and Bird were like the young stars, Dr. J was the face of the NBA.
Yep.
And his only gripe is like if you look at his run in the late 70s and 80s, the Sixers were either playing for the finals or in the Eastern Conference finals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Moses Malone who helped him get over that hump.
Yep.
The 4-4-4. Like people say that 82-83 Sixers team is probably the greatest NBA team in NBA history. They only lost one playoff game. I special.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the last vintage card for me is, for some reason, and this is probably the one that I want them. The Dr. J and this are probably tied for the ones that I want the most, but it's the 56 Topps Jackie Robinson. And there's just something about that 56 set, like how they have, the large picture of the player's face in the foreground, but in the background, almost like it looks like a watercolor painting of the player in action, and with Jackie sliding into the base, which is just like something that is the way that I envision him playing. Sliding into a base is something he was known for. And so it's just like there's just something about that card that I'm really drawn to.
Yeah.
And again, there is no shortage of fans of that card and that set for all those same reasons. So, I'm sure it's going to be, something that's not going to break the bank. Hopefully, if I can find, the right copy.
So my Jackie PC, I have the 54 Topps, which most people say beyond his rookie card, that is the most iconic card because it's the first card that shows a picture of his actual face. Because a lot of his other cards had that like artsy look.
Yep.
This was like an actual picture of him. So I have the 54, the 55, and the 56. And I actually wrote a hobby blog of it. Like that was my hobby hat trick because I got all three of those cards in the same year. And the story on how I got all three is very unique. And, so if you ever on my Instagram, check out that hobby blog. You'll see 3 pictures of the 54, 55, and 56 cards. It's my hobby hat trick, all in 1 year. So,
yeah, and I love the videos that you like, the way that you share your stories with the cards, and like you can feel the feelings that you have around them. But also like there's something very soothing, not to nerd out on your content, but like there's something very soothing about the soft spoken way that you it's like you're telling a story. Like I really enjoyed story time with my grandparents or like older people that I looked up to, and I feel like I get a little bit of that when I listen to some of your content. It's just like it feels like come and sit down on the couch and cozy up and let's listen to a story. So it's very soothing, and like I said, sometimes we need cards to kind of like get away from some of the stresses in our day-to-day, and it's a nice soothing break when I need it sometimes, and sometimes I do.
as someone who does therapy every week, and I encourage anyone, like it's one thing to take care of your body, but it's another thing to take care of yourself from the neck up. As someone who does therapy every week, because mental hygiene is extremely important, especially coming off the backdrop of a global pandemic, and people are still suffering from that. So I encourage everybody, like, if you're ready to have a therapeutic moment and like talking to someone, try it. But also find something that creates that therapeutic space for you. And that's cards for me. And, and when I'm having those moments when I'm writing stories and I'm putting words together to describe what the hobby means to me, or talking about a previous hobby experience. You know, it's a form of wellness that I'm still trying to find the words for, but it helps me every day become the best version of who I am. And, you know, I just try to be as authentic as possible with my content. And more importantly, you know, as an educator, as a father, and as a husband, you know, more importantly, a father, I just try to show my daughter and then also my other two children, like, want them to see, like, this is a catalog of my experiences. So, like, just showing them, like, what passion looks like, feels like, and sounds like. And it's okay to be passionate about something. And it's okay to express your passion about something you really enjoy. And it's okay to explore that at a deep level. And be encouraged and be courageous about sharing it. Because I guarantee it's going to resonate with someone. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I echo your sentiments on the importance of taking care of yourself from the neck up. And sometimes, you know, when we see some of this, you know, the spats in the hobby space, and sometimes I just think, like, I remember talking to somebody when I was in college, and I was like, I genuinely feel like everybody in the world needs some time with a therapist. You know, we all, like, life is not easy, you know, and some people it's harder, or some people it's easier than others, but everybody has stuff that they just need to talk about. And I think we would all be better in the world if we just talk through things. You know, and there's so many times, like, you know, when I've sat down with my therapist, and it's just like, I just need to get something off my chest, like, you know. And I think some people get scared about kind of opening up, you know, and everybody's experience can be different, but, like, my experience has always been, you know, I'm usually an open book with things, and sometimes you just need somebody to listen. You know, and if you can find really good friends that can be that for you, that's awesome. You know, but sometimes you know, you need somebody that's outside of kind of your echo chamber, I call it.
No, most definitely. Most definitely.
And it's good to get that perspective.
Yeah, because it's a person that can hold you accountable. Like, before I went into therapy, the person who held me accountable the most was my Aunt Dell. And, you know, God rest her soul. But, like, she was the person, like, and, you know, yes, you know, I'm a husband, I'm a father, you know, I'm a collector, you know, but I'm also a flawed human being, you know what I mean? And I've made mistakes in my life, and just every day, just learning from those mistakes through that therapy that I go to every week, and just to be honest and open about myself to someone who can give me, like, feedback and not tell me what I want to hear. And it's helped me a lot with my emotional intelligence. And I was telling my therapist today, like, emotional intelligence is so underrated. And I think if we learn what emotional intelligence is, to nurture our emotional intelligence. A lot of the things that happen in our inner circles, outside of our circles, are just in the world in general. People be able to have better interactions with each other. People will be able to resolve things in a more healthy way, where people are, like, heard, seen, and validated. And we don't do enough of that. And I try to practice that in a hobby. That's why I'm big on, like, human capital. Like, are we creating spaces for people to feel like they belong, for people to feel like they're seen, and for people to be celebrated because you add value to this space. And that value that you add to this space is important because it takes us to the next level.
Right. Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And one of the things I think about, this is kind of this will probably be a long ramble into eventually, like, a topical, you know, top of mind thing. But I remember growing up, again, you know, my brother was a Jordan fan, I was a Penny fan, and, you know, Jordan was the greatest, right? Jordan was the top of the heap. He was dominating in the 90s. And I, as well as a lot of other people, get caught up in like, the kind of hating on the greatest, right? And like try to pick him apart and like find flaws. And, again, because I was rooting for a player that was not Jordan, I was trying to create arguments. You can either build a bigger building or tear one down. And I was trying to
Yeah.
poke holes in his to make my players seem better. And I was, you'd hear all the different things that people would say, he's a ball hog. He's a selfish player. He plays defense when he wants to. All this nonsense that, like, looking back, we can see how silly those arguments were.
Yeah.
And like through that, I remember watching his last game for the Wizards against the Sixers, and having this moment of like realization that like this is something special that I'm watching right now, and I missed out on something special before by wasting time, kind of like, oh, I hope that this happens or that happens, and not just enjoying greatness in the moment. And it's something that like it was a good learning experience, I think, that like I could take forward and be like, in the future, I would prefer to enjoy greatness as it's happening rather than having to try and look back and be like, man, if only. Which, taking that to present day, last night LeBron James beating Kareem's 40-year-old record to become the all-time great scorer. I see some of the same behavior patterns playing out online with, and my thing I consistently keep saying is I'm going to enjoy greatness while it's happening. But so with all that, I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings or reactions of LeBron James, becoming the all-time leading scorer in the NBA.
I think it's a testament to everything that I knew he would be when he was drafted. The potential, the ability, and for me, it was a very unique moment being, seeing him, like, we're like a year apart. Seeing him in his, I believe it was a game, I think they were playing Detroit, and it was his rookie year. And the Cavs were down, and he was a rookie. And he was around a bunch of veteran players at the time. And everybody was sitting on the bench. It was a pivotal moment. And there was LeBron, this rookie, like, come on, guys, we can win this game. We can win this game. Like, and in those moments, they tell you a lot about a player. And all the pressure that LeBron had to shoulder from an 18-year-old kid coming into the league and his body and working what he's done now. I say this to everybody. When he decides to walk away from the game, if you didn't enjoy him while you had the chance, you missed out. And people don't recognize what has walked away from the game. And I think that has happened in the NBA in pivotal moments. Like, there's these generational players that when they walk away, we realize, like, man, we lost something great. And that's the same way I feel about, like, Wilt Chamberlain. Like, Wilt Chamberlain gets this bad rap. Oh, he played against plumbers. He was 7'2", and everybody was 5'11", which is not true. He played against professional basketball players. And he was not only big, but he was skilled. And his basketball IQ was phenomenal. And like Wilt, like LeBron, if you insert them in any era in the NBA, they dominated because they were just that special. And the same thing goes for Jordan. And the same thing, to a certain extent, goes for Kobe Bryant. Like, these generational talents that when they left the game, it's just like, if you didn't enjoy that, if you didn't appreciate that, you missed out. You missed out. You missed out on someone who was a student of the game, who worked hard, who put in the work, you know what I mean, and who pushed themselves to levels beyond their imagination. And I didn't see the moment last night because I fell asleep, but I had this moment when I woke up and my phone went off and it says LeBron passes him. So I watched the video clip over and over again, and I said, how fitting you run this typical play at the elbow, and he gets his look at the rim, and he makes his move, the headband, everything, like perfect photo shot. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And kudos to LeBron. He deserves everything that he has earned in the league with all his stats, championships, his accolades. You know, like we'll never see anything like him probably when I'm an old man.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I truly appreciated what he's done over the past 20 years. Um, and one thing no one can say about him is that he didn't perform, because he performed.
Hmm.
He performed. I mean, I think he is the only player that throughout his entire career, and correct me if I'm wrong, that has averaged 25 points or more every season.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll take your word for it. I
Yeah,
have to look the stats, but
yeah,
it's incredible.
yeah. And I like and think about some of the most prolific scorers. Mike didn't do that. Wilt didn't do that. You know what I mean? Um, so
Mm.
you know, man, beautiful moment when I was watching the highlights. Beautiful moment,
Yeah.
and I tend not to watch. I only watch certain regular season games, but I tend to pick up basketball once it gets like in the spring, because that's when it gets serious and everybody starts to play for real, and it's not about like stats. So you can get your bonuses and everything, or you know what I mean. So that's when you really see basketball. You know?
Oh yeah.
So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that time.
It's funny because I'm blessed with a wife who loves sports just as much, if not more, than me at times, and she's a Lakers fan first of all. Um, Her secondary team, just because of Steph Curry, is the Warriors.
Yeah,
But it's, again, if Steph Curry left the Warriors, she'd be a fan of Steph Curry. But the Lakers are her team. So when LeBron went there, she was excited.
yeah,
But AD's really her guy. She's a Kentucky fan.
yeah.
But so
I love AD.
yeah, anybody from like DeMarcus Cousins, it doesn't matter who you are. Karl Anthony Towns, if you went to Kentucky, she's a fan. But like if you're on her team, she's a huge, yeah. It's all
Yeah,
about AD for her. But so she loves watching regular season basketball, and there's a lot of times that we'll be on the couch and I'll fall asleep. So like last night I was falling asleep and she was like waking me up. He's about to do it. I'm like, okay, I'm up. And then as soon
yeah,
as he did, I was like, I'm back out. So,
yeah, yeah,
but we were talking as the game was, we saw LeBron warming up and he was practicing some hook shots. And we were talking about, wouldn't it be really cool if he did break the record with a hook shot, kind of paying that homage to Kareem?
Oh yeah,
Which would have been really cool. But also, like,
yeah,
just like you were saying, the way that he did it, like that, fade away with the leg, that was like a perfect pose for him. And like,
yeah.
there was no wrong way to break that or right way
No,
to break that. But I
no.
think that like you said, that photo, it's almost like the last shot photo for Jordan. Like it's just one of
Yeah,
those that's really going to stand up and be an iconic moment for them in
yeah.
their career. And yeah, it was beautiful.
Beautiful moment, and you know, I'm gonna say this. I grew up in the Jordan era, and I grew up in the LeBron era. You know, I'm not gonna say I had the opportunity to rub shoulders with him on the basketball court, but we were a part of the same class, because when I was in prep school, he was in high school, and there was some camps that I played at, and he was there, and everybody was mesmerized about him as a high school player. And granted, he deserved it because he was the best player on the court. And I tend to have the mentality that I don't say anybody's better than me, but he was the best player on the court.
Mm.
And I never had the opportunity to share a court with him on that circuit, in the camp circuit, when he was playing in it. But we all saw him play, and when he got on the court, people was mesmerized about him and what he can do. And I never forget, there was a time where he stole the ball at a game, and he took 2 dribbles and ran the rest of the way. He literally traveled, but we were all just amazed by him.
Mm.
And even the referees, and they didn't call it travel. So and he just took off from nowhere and dunked the ball. So yeah, he is the greatest overall basketball player ever. Like IQ, ability, his physique, like speed, agility, everything. I'm a little biased when it comes to Wilt because I don't think Wilt gets the credit that he deserves. But if LeBron James isn't in your top three, something's just wrong with you, and you're just a hater. You know what I mean? You're just a hater. That's the only thing I can say. Like LeBron James is not in your top three. You're just a hater.
Yeah.
So
I would have to agree with you there. And talking about Wilt, like, yeah, because like we've heard all this stuff, like, he played against plumbers and firemen and that type of stuff. I think is nonsense because my feeling also is that also detracts from greats like Bill Russell. To say that they had to go toe to toe on a regular basis. But like the other thing because like growing up in the New England area, I would hear all these legends about Bill Russell, and most people from New England would say Bill Russell was better than Wilt Chamberlain. And I really think you're talking, you're really splitting hairs with the two of them, but they played differently. And they both.
And most people don't know this, and not to cut you off, most people don't know this. Bill Russell even said that Wilt was better than him.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and the story I love about Wilt is he was really known for his scoring, but Wilt decided one year, because everyone was talking about, he doesn't pass to his teammates, said, okay, I'm going to go and lead the league in assists. And he did. And that just like shows you how like the game was at his will, and that takes a special type of talent, and you don't just get that by being big. We've seen plenty of really big players in the NBA. Talk about George Murison, and the game was not at his will by any stretch of the imagination. So
I mean, Wilt went through times where he stopped dunking the ball and he would shoot jump shots.
Yeah,
most people don't know this. So we foam at the mouth when we see a Dirk Nowitzki shoot a fadeaway jump shot. But Wilt was doing that in the 60s. It's just that the NBA, for some reason, don't show a lot of those clips. And here's the counter argument that I would have to anybody who say Wilt played against plumbers. If you're going to criticize Wilt, then you have to criticize George Mikan.
Yep.
Because George Mikan played at the time where he was the best big man in the league. He won
the
multiple
biggest
championships and the biggest, and he won multiple championships in a row.
Yep.
And if you put George Mikan and Wilt Chamberlain on the same court, I'm not hating on George Mikan, but I'm putting my money on Wilt Chamberlain.
Yep.
So if we're going to critique Wilt like that, then we have to give that same critique to George Mikan and validate his championships and his ability as a player, because he didn't play against the best talent. Which I'm not going to do that, because he still played against professional basketball players. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
But that's neither here or there. But I stand firmly on, like, to anybody, if LeBron James isn't in your top three, then you're just a hater. And in some cases, you can make an argument that he's the top two player, greatest player of all time. And for me, like I said, I'm biased about Wilt Chamberlain, because I just don't think we understood what we had when he played during his career. But people just need to stop hating on LeBron. It's just, at this point, it's just weird. It's just weird.
Yeah, it just looks silly also, and I think a lot of people are going to look silly when they look back at some of their takes. But it's fun to see and to think. He's still got so much basketball left in him, and it's really, he's going to choose when he walks away from the game. But it's like he's what is he, 38?
38, 39, I think.
Yeah, and he's not slowing down.
No, I personally think he's probably going to play another 2 years. I think he's trying to wait for his son.
Yeah, he said he's waiting for Bronny.
Yeah, so, hey, he deserves it. He deserves everything, He invests in his body. He takes care of himself. He conducts himself like a man, a father, a husband at a high level. Can't nobody say nothing bad about him off the court. So, like I said, if you don't like LeBron James as a basketball player, you don't know nothing about basketball, and two, I don't like to say something is wrong with people, but something is wrong with you. So uh, kudos to LeBron.
Yeah,
I actually hope he wins another championship.
I would love it.
Yeah. So, but we shall see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
Shall see.
I think they're trading for D'Angelo Russell, so we'll see. What the Lakers have in store for us for the rest of the season. So one of the other things that I was just thinking about. So you said West Philadelphia, born and raised. We don't need to go through the whole spiel.
Well, I'm from North Philly, not West Philly, because I don't want nobody
right. Yeah. No, we don't.
But I
need to
West
mix
Philly.
those two up.
West Philly is a special place in my heart because I spent a long time in my career as an educator working in West Philly. So West Philly is like my second home.
So I know Will Smith's answer to this question, and I know another one of our hobby friends who's from the Philadelphia area's answer to this question. But I need to know, where are you getting the steak and cheese?
Max's.
Max's, okay.
Geno's, Pat's, all of them. Those. That's not the home of the original cheesesteak. Anybody who knows Philadelphia and truly knows cheesesteaks, they know the cheesesteak originated at Max's on Broad and Erie. If you watch any of the Creed films, there's a scene when they're actually at Max's. So I don't eat meat anymore. I'm a vegan. But if you want a good cheesesteak, go to Max's.
All right, there we go.
And then also the variation of the cheesesteak that I grew to love too is a cheesesteak hoagie. So you get lettuce and tomatoes on there too.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's just my opinion. But I mean, if you know anybody that knows any true history about Philadelphia, Max's at Broad and Erie is the holy grail. I'll use a hobby phrase, the holy grail of cheesesteaks. Geno's and Pat's are the more like tourist parts.
That's what I've heard. So we were talking a little bit before we got on camera, and so the first time that I went to like a real city, growing up again, rural New England, it was Philadelphia. I fell in love.
I went to college in New England, by the way.
Okay, where if you don't mind me asking?
I went to Endicott College.
Okay, yep. I was
North Shore of Boston.
Yeah, Endicott was one of like my final 5. I didn't end up choosing to apply there because they didn't have the major that I was looking for. But great school. So we were in Philadelphia and we wanted to go and get a steak and cheese. So we asked somebody and they sent us to Pat's, and we were really excited and everything. And then I remember seeing Will Smith. I think it was during the playoffs when Philly was playing against the Lakers for the finals. I think Will Smith was talking about Pat's and he went there and stuff. And then I went to college with somebody who's from the Philadelphia area, and I was asking her the same thing, and she was like all into Geno's. So I was like, first off, you're wrong, but second of all, I know you're not really a Philly girl because you wouldn't be picking either one of those two if you were.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
It's always fun to have that discussion because I was asking Lefko. And I was asking Lefko the same question when I had him on. And, I was like, okay, Pats or Geno's. And he was like, well, if I have to pick one of them, but neither one is the right answer. And then he went off and he listed, I can't remember all of them, but he listed 4 or 5 different ones that he's like, if you want a good Philly cheesesteak, if you want the real thing that, So I'm like, all right, I got to ask this question again.
And my second best, if not Max's, would be Pagano's. So Pagano's is another historic cheesesteak place in Philadelphia. They got multiple stores in the Philly area. So, but Max's has always been number 1 for me.
Well, the next time I'm in Philly, I'm going to have to try them out.
Broad and Erie. Shout out to everybody on Erie Avenue. Yeah,
So also being a Philly guy, is it safe to assume for the Super Bowl that you're rooting for the Eagles?
So I have not watched NFL in probably about I want to say since the whole Colin Kaepernick thing.
Mm,
And then there was also some comments that was made by some owners that just didn't sit well with me.
absolutely.
And I was just like, I'm gonna give my time to something else. However, being an Eagles fan since I was a kid, I did not watch the Eagles win the Super Bowl when they beat the New England Patriots. Did not watch the parade or anything. However, this moment is unique because for the first time you have two black quarterbacks playing for the Super Bowl. And my daughter asked me, she said, "Daddy, are we going to watch the Super Bowl?" She said, "I want to see the Eagles win." And I'm sitting there like looking at my daughter's face and I'm thinking like, I might break my boycott for this moment just to see, because I think the last Super Bowl that I watched was when two black head coaches played for the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And that
Was
was,
that
I believe it was
Lovey
Lovey
and
and
Tony
Tony
Dungy?
Dungy.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking about it. But the fascinating thing about this Super Bowl, there's this like Twitter post that's been floating around where this guy he predicted a 10-year span of who would win the Super Bowl.
Mm.
And if you look at the date he posted his message, it was before all the Super Bowls that happened. So he predicted 10 years of Super Bowls starting from 2016 on down. And he predicted that the Eagles will win.
Wow.
And then the following years, it's like the Bills, the Bengals, and like two other teams.
Okay.
But it's like a timestamp tweet.
Wow.
And everybody's like, it's like trending in certain Twitter circles.
Sure.
And people are looking at it. But I'm thinking about watching the game. If I watch the game, obviously I'll be rooting for the Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts has a phenomenal story. And the unique thing about him that I love about him, in education, especially where I work, we have this concept that we talk about a lot at my school called dignity, right? And we're all born with dignity. We're all born with this inherent value of dignity. But we're not born with the tools to nurture our own dignity. And Donna Hicks, she's like the foremost, expert on this notion of dignity and what it looks like and how it plays out in our society. And when I think about Jalen Hurts, he exemplifies what dignity looks like, feels like, and sounds like. Not just the word, but the actions and the definition behind what dignity is. Here's a guy who lost his starting spot on a national stage, national championship. He honored his own dignity and the dignity of the person who took his spot by cheering for him, celebrating him, and everything, running on the field to congratulate him. He gets drafted. He goes to Oklahoma, wins the Heisman. You know what I mean? Like, gets drafted, has the starting spot for a while, loses that starting spot, but persists. And now he's playing for the Super Bowl. Like, true meaning of like dignity and like, I know my inherent value. I'm not going to succumb to like nastiness or like undermining people, but I'm going to honor my dignity. I'm going to honor my self-dignity, and I'm going to honor the dignity of others. And here it is, this guy's playing for a Super Bowl. So when you look at his career over this span through that lens, at that deeper level, it's a magical and phenomenal story, man. And much respect to him. And so the one thing that was funny to me, being a Philly guy, and I'm also another player that I love, and I have a PC of his, is Rasheed Wallace. I did
Hmm.
not know Rasheed Wallace was a Kansas City Chiefs fan. So I'm
Oh, I
like,
didn't know that either.
when if you look up Philadelphia in the book, like you try to define what Philadelphia is, like you see Rasheed Wallace's face. You
Right,
know what I
right.
mean? And for him to not be an Eagles fan, it's pretty interesting to know that he's a Chiefs fan. So it's going to be fun
Hmm.
seeing his reaction if the Eagles win. Um, he
Yeah,
posted something on like his Instagram talking about that. So um, uh, you know, if I watch, I'm going to be rooting for the Eagles. So,
for sure.
but
Yeah,
we'll
it,
see.
and so you mentioned Kaepernick, and it was interesting, when a lot of the controversy started with him kneeling. A lot of people naturally started looking at his cards, and it was interesting
Yeah.
seeing like a lot of people his cards started going up. And one of the things that I remember saying to myself is like, I was never a Kaepernick fan. Leading up to that, like I just didn't like the style of his game, right?
Yeah.
But then that moment with him, I was like, no, 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 I'm a fan of him as a person.
Yeah.
Doing a very courageous act, and
Hmm.
regardless of what the ramifications were. So I remember
Yeah.
like I was talking to some of my friends, and I was like, no, no, like I know the way this is gonna go, and I know that like his cards are gonna go up because like he's being talked about right now, and some people are buying his cards because they think that they can, make money on it, all that kind of stuff. But I said, it's gonna settle down, and I'm gonna buy his cards because I think a lot of people have talked about like our collections are like a representation of who we are.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, when my daughter and my son look through my cards, what he stood for is important to me, and it's important to them. It's important to everyone. Um,
Hmm.
but my family, being a biracial family, it's something that I want them to also learn about and hear about.
Yeah.
And there's some people in my family who feel very differently, and that's they're entitled to their opinion. Sometimes I like to say
Hmm.
they're free to be wrong. Um, but
Hmm.
it's one of those things that I I like getting cards. There's certain people who I won't say their name because of when I pull their card out of a pack, not a good person, right? That's pretty much all
Yeah.
all I'll say,
Yeah.
right? And there's other people who like I have really mixed emotions on, but he's a player that as a player I didn't love his game purely on the field, but as a person that trumps everything, and I'm like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I need a piece of this,
Yeah. Yeah.
something that I also was like looking to try to find like baby sized like the onesie jerseys. I was trying to
Yeah.
find ones to fit my son when he was born,
Yeah.
and I couldn't find any. But
Yeah.
that's something that
Yeah.
maybe down the line I'll get.
I don't own the Kaepernick card, but I would love to own one day. I don't collect football cards, and often when I get them, I tend to like pay it forward and give them
Hmm.
away. I'm going to be giving away a bunch of football cards, and over the next couple of weeks in my giveaway, and I have some real good cards that I'm going to be giving away. But I'm not a football collector. I pretty much collect baseball, basketball, and hockey. But like to your point, like when my children see my collection, you know, it's cards like this. It's Wayne Gretzky, O-Pee-Chee 1990 card that's going to tell the story of like, oh wow, why did Dad collect hockey?
Hmm.
And when they go back and read my hobby blogs and everything that has been cataloged and the stories that I told, they're going to see that like this card spoke to my evolution. Like when I left Ludlow and got bused to Penn Treaty, which was a predominantly white school in a predominantly
Hmm.
white neighborhood, my collecting world grew. You know, these two communities became one, and now I'm learning about hockey cards and I'm collecting hockey cards, and just like it tells the story of my evolution as a collector, but also as a human being and as a black man and as a father and as a husband. That no matter where you are in life, you can grow and you can learn and you can explore new things, and you can try new things.
Hmm.
So, I that resonates with me, and that's why I always take the time to just try to enjoy others people's other people's experience as collectors, because you might find something, and then there's cards like this, you know,
Oh
that
yeah.
is extremely, nostalgic, and you think of all the debates as a kid, and all the bragging rights when you opened up that pack of NBA hoops and you pulled the Jordan card out, or the Flair. You open up that Flair pack and you pulled out that 1990 Jordan, or when Skybox first came out, which was like
Mm-hmm.
our premium cards, and you got the Jordan tribute card,
Mm.
So, um, you know, those are the things that that layered, um, you know, that layered idea of like, whoa, what type of collector was my dad? Like, you know, um, yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's
No,
powerful.
yeah, I feel that you're so right. That 90s skybox set. I mean,
Yeah,
talk about really moving the hobby forward.
yeah. Then
It
there's cards like this.
yep, yep.
Yeah. So the
But I think
1964 Pete Rose, All Star second year rookie. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and he makes me always think about like players who should be in the Hall of Fame,
yeah,
and not just the baseball Hall of Fame, but we're talking about all sports.
yeah.
Um, and that there's so it's so funny you bring up like the Jordan card and like all the debates that come along, and like we think about all these different things that were said about the players while they played or their careers afterwards, and again like all these debates and all these talking points, and a lot of it is like debates that we have with our friends, and it's good fun memories, right? We can kind of
Yeah.
jab each other and no, he doesn't deserve this, or no, he didn't do that, um so many good memories, and it's just like just this little piece of cardboard, and
Yeah.
I like sitting here and like here's a penny card of that I dreamt of, that my buddies and I argue about how important it is or isn't, and it's just fun stuff like that brings back great
Here's
memories.
my Wilt
Oh yeah,
in
in
action,
action.
beat up, but it's special to me. This card is never going anywhere.
Yeah,
Speaking
and
of penny,
I'm all ears for this.
I do have some slab pennies, but here's my raw
Oh
uh,
yes,
penny collection. Got some rookies
all the
in here.
classics.
Got some medals. I got some other ones that I just got that I'm gonna be making content about soon.
Hmm.
But yeah, Penny was like Penny was like almost becoming that that player that like Michael Jordan was, like the psychology behind him. Like
Hmm.
everybody wanted to be like Mike, but we wanted to be like Penny, especially the character that they created, Little Penny, and
Right.
like his sneakers and
Yep.
everything, the flash, the excitement. So that totally resonates. I love Penny Hardaway cards, and every time I get an opportunity to collect one, um, I go after it.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a junk wax card or like one of his most like rare inserts. Here's another card that's special that I just got. Well, I got this in 2022, but
Oh yeah.
that's the big boy right there.
It's a beauty. It's a classic.
And
That's another one
then
that I probably need to put on my short list.
that's the Wilt refractor.
Yep. Is that the orange
Um, uh,
refractor, red refractor?
yeah, the orange. Yeah,
Yeah.
I am praying this year that the rookie. I don't know when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. That I get my hands on what is my holy grail rookie cards, the Wilt Chamberlain rookie.
Mm.
I got the MJ rookie, so I finished my '86 Flair set towards the end of 2022. So I created a bunch of content about that. That was a
Hmm.
journey in itself,
Sure.
and the highlight about that whole journey was like it taught me that like no card is off limits.
Mm.
and you get in the hobby what you put into the hobby. And a lot of the cards that I got in that '86 Flair Chase, a lot of people gave them to me.
Mm.
You know, and always think back to like, I'm able to do this because of the human capital. And I was collecting that set at a time where like prices were up there.
Mm.
Like people were overcharging, and you know, it was just like, I remember one time, this guy Mark, he goes by the Delaware collector. I'm probably messing up his name. Delaware Sports Cards Hunter. He sent me like 20 Flair cards that had Mark Eaton in it. It had like top guys in it. And I was just like, for free, you know what I mean? So it just goes to show like the hobby is what you make it. And if you give to the hobby, it will give back to you, simply because at the core of the hobby, regardless of the toxic stuff that happened, the people who are scammers and all that stuff, once you weave through all that stuff, at the core of the hobby, there's a population of people who truly care about this space. And they want to see everybody experience this place at a level that's unique to them and what they want. And, you know, so to me, that defines the human capital that I often describe in the various stories that I tell and the hobby blogs that I write. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And well, this has been a blast. I can't think of anything that we haven't covered that I really wanted to. But before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to share? I mean, I've learned so much from this conversation, and I'm sure this won't be the last conversation that we get into some deep learning together. But before we get back to our wives and our our more regular scheduled programming, what else do you want to share?
Well, one thing I can say, Jake, I truly appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you seeing me and thinking about me enough to say, you know what, I want to have a conversation with Sam and get him on the show and know his story and learn his story. And you know, that means a lot, you know, that you're associating your brand with me. So I appreciate the connection that we were able to establish. I know we follow each other on social media platforms, and you know, I'm always enamored by your posts. You know, the aesthetics of it, the background, the pictures, everything, and you know, I appreciate you for having me on and you know, exposing your listeners to me, and it means a lot.
It's mutual. The admiration's mutual, brother.
Yeah. So definitely need to do it again. Where are you still? Are you in the Philly area, or where are you at?
Local? I wish. So Springfield, Mass is where I'm local to. So not too far from Philly. I can make the trip. But I tend to stay local until like the national. Then I, you know, that's my one time a year that my wife's like, get away from the kids for a little while and have some fun. So
yeah, I would love to go to the Basketball Hall of Fame card show.
Yes.
So if that's ever happening, you know, let's connect and try to put something together.
Yeah, for sure. I think the next one is in April. I think it's I think it's the first weekend in April. I'll send you the stuff.
Yeah.
So that would be a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah. Always want to connect with people in the community, man, and just hear people's experience, because I don't know. Maybe this is cheesy or it's just like a cliche, but I'm a firm believer that as human beings, for us to reach our fullest potential, we need to come in contact with other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think the human collective is. So for me, that's magical. And I wouldn't trade that for nothing in the world. So
couldn't say any better.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
Sam, this has been a blast. Like you said, we will be sure to have more conversations soon. But um, hopefully everybody learned a little bit, and stay tuned for more. And if you haven't checked out Sam's content, please, I'll make sure to link it. I'll try to remember to link it before I post the video. Sometimes it happens
Yeah.
afterwards, but IG, like you said, making posts every other week or so, but they
Yeah.
are always something that are enjoyable. They're something that I enjoy, but they're also, like I said, they're something that is like a nice change of pace and a little bit of relaxation. So, um, if you haven't checked it out already, a lot of people have. There's no
Yeah.
shortage of people following you,
Yeah.
but definitely do.
Yeah. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.